In the glamorous, shining world of Hollywood, where people view stars as their role models and perfect icons, beneath this luster and perfection, Hollywood keeps many dark, brutal, and tragic secrets hidden by its powerful godfathers. Today, we discuss and uncover one of the most controversial and notorious cases that they tried to bury and succeeded, but not entirely. We talk about the controversial death of George Reeves and what truly happened to him. On June 16, 1959, the man who brought Superman to life on television lay dead in his upstairs bedroom from a single gunshot wound, and downstairs, an uninvited Hollywood gathering was drinking heavily. Later, the police and investigators called it an open and shut suicide. But the physical evidence, it tells a completely different story. What if the official story is a lie? Let's find out with the killer's eyes. But now, before analyzing the crime scene, we must establish the physical profile of the victim. George Reeves was not a fragile Hollywood celebrity who could be easily intimidated. Born George Kiefer Brewer, he was a highly capable athlete. In his youth, he trained intensely as an amateur boxer at Pasadena Junior College, competing in local bouts and developing lifelong defensive reflexes. When World War II broke out, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces. His military service provided him with tactical discipline and a thorough familiarity with firearms. At 45 years old, Reeves maintained a heavy, powerful build. He was a veteran and a fighter, completely capable of physically defending himself against an ordinary threat. The setting of his death was 1579 Benedict Canyon Drive, a compact, split-level house with a small architectural footprint. In a tight wooden structure of this design, sound travels instantly between floors. Footsteps, elevated voices, and closed doors echo throughout the entire building. On the night of June 15, 1959, the residence contained 3 people: Reeves, his fiancée Leonore Lemon, and a temporary house guest, writer Robert Condon. Reeves retired to his upstairs bedroom around midnight, leaving the house completely quiet. Around 1 a.m. on June 16th, that quiet was shattered. 2 acquaintances, William Bliss and Carol von Ronkel, arrived at the house completely uninvited. They had been drinking, and instead of turning them away, Lemon opened the door and began serving them drinks in the living room. The gathering quickly became loud and disruptive. Woken by the noise, a highly agitated Reeves walked downstairs at 1:15 a.m. dressed in his pajamas. A tense, bitter argument immediately broke out between Reeves and William Bliss over the disrespect of the late-night intrusion. After ordering the uninvited guests to quiet down, Reeves turned his back, walked back up the stairs, and closed his bedroom door. Downstairs, the drinking continued. Moments later, a single gunshot echoed through the small house. Yet the guests did not rush upstairs to investigate or administer aid. Instead, an entire 45 minutes passed before anyone called the LAPD, leaving a critical window of time completely unaccounted for. When responding officers finally arrived at the residence, they bypassed the party guests downstairs and headed straight up the narrow staircase to the master bedroom. What they discovered inside that room should have triggered an immediate, high-priority homicide investigation. Instead, the responding officers spent mere minutes evaluating the scene before officially labeling the death a self-inflicted suicide. But the physical state of that room flatly contradicted their rushed conclusion. Okay, now let's deep dive into the investigation to see what they said. When we look at the actual forensic reports, the official suicide story shatters. There are 3 massive physical impossibilities left behind at the crime scene. Flaw number 1. The pristine weapon. The gun found on the floor between George Reeves' legs was a heavy 9mm Luger pistol. Firing this weapon coats the shooter's hands with gunpowder residue and leaves finger oil on the metal. Yet forensics found 0 gunpowder residue on Reeves' hands, and not a single fingerprint on the gun. It had been wiped completely clean. Flaw number 2. The hidden bullets and the trapped shell casing. A suicide requires exactly 1 bullet, but investigators found evidence of 3 separate shots. The fatal bullet passed through Reeves' head and lodged deep into the bedroom ceiling. However, The spent shell casing from that shot was inexplicably found trapped underneath his back. Furthermore, investigators discovered 2 extra bullet holes completely hidden from plain sight, fired deep into the floorboards underneath the bedroom rug. Flaw number 3. The silent trauma. Reeves was a heavily built former amateur boxer and World War II veteran. The autopsy revealed unexplained fresh bruises on his body that directly contradicted a passive self-inflicted wound. Yet in a tiny 3-room house, where sound travels instantly, none of the guests downstairs reported hearing a fight, a shout, or a struggle. The physical reality of this room does not fit a self-inflicted wound. Now let's talk about some theories that possibly explain his murder mystery and his inside story. The evidence points to one mastermind, Eddie Mannix, the notorious vice president and chief fixer for MGM. Mannix controlled a dark empire, using mafia connections to bury Hollywood's worst scandals. The motive was pure vengeance. George Reeves had a public affair with Mannix's wife, Toni, but abruptly dumped her. In Mannix's underworld, that public disrespect carried a lethal price tag. To understand how a murder like this could be covered up in broad daylight, we have to pull back the curtain on the golden era of Hollywood. From the 1930s through the 1950s, while the silver screen showcased glitz, glamour, and perfect family values, a dark and criminal empire was operating backstage. Eddie Mannix was the undisputed king of that empire. As the chief fixer for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, his job was to bury the crimes, murders, scandals, and sexual assaults committed by Hollywood's biggest stars before the police or the press could ever find out. Eddie Mannix did not start his career as a filmmaker. He began as a bouncer and thug at an amusement park in New Jersey. There, he forged deep connections with notorious New York and New Jersey mobsters and gangsters. When the powerful studio owners, the Schenck brothers, witnessed Mannix's ruthless nature and his ability to handle problems, they brought him to Hollywood in 1925. Mannix's mandate was simple: use mafia tactics to keep Hollywood in line. He maintained a direct pipeline to underworld hitmen, using them to threaten, extort, and silence anyone who posed a threat to the studio. For MGM, their top stars were multi-million-dollar assets. If a star's dark secrets leaked, the studio faced financial ruin. To prevent this, Mannix kept local police, doctors, judges, and newspaper editors on his payroll. Look at the massive Hollywood scandals Mannix successfully buried. One night, Hollywood's ultimate leading man, Clark Gable, was driving under the influence and struck a pedestrian in Los Angeles, killing him. Gable's career and life were over in an instant. Terrified, he called Eddie Mannix. Before the police arrived at the scene, Mannix whisked Gable away. He then paid a low-level, low-wage studio employee a massive sum of money to take the fall and confessed to the police that he was driving the car. Gable walked away completely clean, and the story never hit the newspapers. In 1935, the glamorous and deeply religious actress Loretta Young became pregnant by a married Clark Gable. In that era, having a child out of wedlock meant the instant death of an actress's career. Mannix quietly shipped Loretta off to Europe. When she gave birth to a daughter, the baby was hidden away in an orphanage. A year later, following a script written entirely by Mannix, Loretta Young staged a massive publicity stunt, announcing to the world that she was adopting a child from that very orphanage. The secret remained buried for decades. When it came to protecting the studio, Mannix was merciless. In 1937, a young junior dancer named Patricia Douglas was sexually assaulted by a powerful studio executive at an MGM casting party. Defying the odds, Patricia went straight to the district attorney to file charges. Mannix unleashed the full weight of MGM. He intimidated witnesses, smeared Patricia's character in the press, and framed her as an unstable, untrustworthy woman. Under Mannix's intense pressure, the court threw out the case, and Patricia's voice was permanently silenced. Even their most vulnerable stars were subjected to this regime. When Judy Garland was a teenage star filming The Wizard of Oz, the studio wanted her to work grueling, around-the-clock hours. Mannix and the studio-approved doctors began feeding the young girl amphetamines to keep her awake and energetic during the day. followed by barbiturates to knock her out at night. This manufactured cycle hooked Garland on a severe, lifelong drug addiction that ultimately claimed her life. Mannix didn't just cover up other people's violence. He was a deeply violent and abusive man in his personal life. In 1937, Mannix's first wife, Bernice, filed for divorce. In court documents, she testified that Eddie beat her like an animal, broke her bones, and had countless extramarital affairs. However, just before the divorce could be finalized, Bernice died in a highly suspicious car accident near Palm Springs. To this day, historians suspect Mannix engineered the crash. Following Bernice's death, Mannix married his mistress, Toni Lanier. The two shared a bizarre, toxic arrangement. Eddie had a long-term affair with a Japanese woman, while his wife Toni openly dated the Superman actor, George Reeves. Eddie initially tolerated the affair because it kept his wife occupied, while he pursued his own vices. But when Reeves abruptly dumped Toni and engaged with Leonore Lemon, the dynamic turned lethal. A single intruder couldn't take down a trained boxer like Reeves. Instead, Mannix likely sent some mafia goons or professional hitmen who blended in with the uninvited party guests. When Reeves retreated upstairs, they followed. A violent multi-man struggle broke out, explaining the fresh bruises on Reeves' body, and the two stray shots fired deep into the floorboards. Overpowered by sheer numbers, he was pinned down and executed. The killers then used that crucial 45-minute delay to sanitize the room and wipe the Luger pristine. This explains why, when George Reeves was found dead, the Los Angeles Police Department completely ignored the glaring forensic red flags. The bullet holes under the rug, the wiped weapon, and the fresh bruises on George's body. The police chief and the lead detectives were deep in Eddie Mannix's pocket. With a single phone call, the ultimate fixer spun his final web, turning Superman's murder into a permanent, official suicide. So, that's it for today's video. If you liked my analysis of what happened to George Reeves, then follow up and tell me your thoughts on who killed George Reeves and what happened that night in the comment section.